Depending on how you look at it, this might be the most important building in the entire land. By the end of this video, you'll never see Cars Land the same way ever again. You've walked through Cars Land countless times and somehow probably never questioned this building. It blends in so well that your brain immediately files it under, yep, that belongs here. Except here's the magic trick. It doesn't belong here. And technically, it's not even part of Radiator Springs, which I'm going to explain today why it may be the most important building in all of Radiator Springs. Because without this building and the compromise that it represents, Cars Land would have never felt like Cars Land. When Imagineering first began laying out Cars Land, the original plan wasn't nearly as big as it stands today. After all, this was Disney's first ever single IP land. Intellectual property. Nobody knew exactly how much space Radiator Springs would need, but one man did. Bob Weiss, president of Walt Disney Imagineering, and the guy who saved DCA, took one look at the early layout and had one requirement that he insisted on. The original plan wasn't big enough. Bob Weiss believed Cars Land needed to feel as large and as deep as lands across the Esplanade, just as explorable as anything you would find inside of Disneyland. Because standing in the shadow of the original park, DCA always felt small, shallow, and largely unfinished. It missed the Disneyland attention to detail. So Bob made a bold pitch, pushed the entire land all the way back to the service road, therefore making the land as big as it could possibly be. But this would mean that every foot would cost more money. Every foot would make the land feel bigger, richer, and more like Disneyland. But that massive push created a massive problem. You see, if Cars Land were to expand all the way to the service road to make the mountain range and forced perspective feel like it was a mile away, then there suddenly was nowhere to put the Backstage facility that Disney needs to run a land of this size, and access for the characters to come and go from onstage to backstage. They had given away that valuable real estate that invisibly keeps a land like this alive. So all of this had to go somewhere, and it couldn't go where it normally goes, directly behind the land. Because for Cars Land, Backstage had just been erased. But this design compromise made so many things possible, and that's the heart of our story today. Because now that you understand the why, let me show you how it changed Cars Land forever. Let me show you something that's so well hidden on the ground, we can really only see it when we look at Cars Land from above. If you look at Cars Land in Google Earth, you'll see something that you can't see with boots on the ground. And that is a perfectly constructed island sitting in the middle of Route 66. This little chunk of land that goes from Cozy Cones over to Flows. If you look at it, if this land was extended, this is a perfectly self-contained loop, where when you're on the ground, it feels perfect in its design and its construction. When you explore this area, you never really notice that you're standing in a little mini island that appears to be designed to push the land back further. So from above, it reads like an addition, a chunk that was tacked on while they wanted to extend the land and also extend those views. Now, I don't have the original master plan, but when you look at the shape of it, the isolation and how it perfectly fits the space, it sure feels like this is the piece that made the land long enough to reach the service road, and in the process, push the Cadillac Range as far back as possible. And this little extra stretch that this island created also created one of the most Disneyland spaces that you'll find in all of DCA. All right, let's first walk down Cross Street East. Nothing back here is obvious and nothing screams for attention. DCA normally puts everything out on display. You see the ride, you see the set, you see the show. Luigi's Rollickin' Roadsters is hidden like it's inside of Disneyland. Think about how many other attractions in this park have its own quiet little space. Not many, because this is a vintage Disneyland design. A quiet street, a tucked away attraction, detail-first storytelling, an area of the park that rewards exploration. You see, Cars Land, it didn't use DCA rules. Cars Land used Disneyland rules. And the island extension on the other side of Cross Street made all of this possible. Without that push to the service road, this corner of the land wouldn't exist. And honestly, we don't even know if Luigi's was originally meant to be here, or if the land first only imagined 2 attractions, or if Luigi's was supposed to be up at the front of the park right across from Tomatoes. We don't know what that original design was, but looking at what we got, we can do a little bit of forensic design and see how well it all came together with that extra expansion, the island right across Cross Street. But as much as I love the east side of Cross Street, nothing compares to the western side. Possibly the most Disneyland location in all of Disney California Adventure. Walk down Cross Street West and suddenly the entire tone of DCA shifts. This street feels layered and intimate. It's simply breathtaking and one of the best spots you'll find in all of the Disney parks around the world. And it also happens to be the most Disneyland spot in the entire park because it's quiet. The only thing that you hear is atmosphere. There's the forced perspective facades of the rockwork, all of the nested sight lines, no visible backstage, no visible exit out of the park. A perfect sense of arrival. You are truly, for this moment, inside of Radiator Springs. And the reason why this street feels so good and so right is because it's not an accident. It was perfectly designed to be what it is. This was the reward, the natural byproduct of stretching the land outward. The island created enough depth to build a true Disney-style cross street. Seriously. Next time you walk down Cross Street West, keep in mind where else in DCA feels like this. It's very similar to walking along the shores of the rivers of America, where Disney Imagineering has thought of every single sight line to put you exactly where you want to be, inside the magic. But even here, there was one more trick that Imagineering had to pull off, because something big and ugly sits right behind this beauty. And you've never seen it. Instead, you see, to me, the most iconic view in all of DCA. When you ride Radiator Racers, you're supposed to feel like you're racing through the desert, not racing to a giant hotel. But if you were to look at this area from the satellite view, you can see that the Paradise Pier Hotel, now the Pixar Place Hotel, would clearly be in our line of sight had Disney not put in the Slam Bridge, which just so happens to be one of the best Disney keyholes ever put inside of a Disney park. So because this was placed here, it does 2 magic tricks at once. From this angle, it blocks us seeing the hotel. But from this direction, it provides the most breathtaking view that DCA has to offer. But its real job is to hide the hotel from this direction. This is what perfect design symmetry and compromise looks like. And keep in mind, the best part of this land was made possible by the compromise of pushing it all the way back to the outer edge of DCA. The artist literally sculpted the rockwork to block out exactly one building from exactly one viewpoint. It's brilliant. This is the level of Disneyland attention to detail that finally found inside of DCA. And it's exactly the level of design that Cars Land is now famous for. It all ties back to one detail, where today's video started. Let me explain how that building is the most important part of this entire design puzzle. But friends, before we break down the building that doesn't belong on stage, if you're having fun today, enjoying looking at Disneyland's past so we can better predict its future, do you a favor, hit subscribe. That's the best way to keep going on this journey with me. Now let me show you the thread that ties all of this together. Slow down, you're not racing yet. Today's video is brought to you by my friends over at Aviron. I hit that age where small decisions suddenly feel like they matter a whole lot more. For me, that moment was turning 50 last December. I kept telling myself I'd start taking better care of my body. And then this spring, I tore a muscle in my calf, skateboarding. That was my wake-up call. But it wasn't just that injury, it was realizing how much time that I had been spending editing, researching, working. So I decided to make a change. and I started focusing on moving every single day. Right around then, Aviron reached out to me about trying their new Victory treadmill. And honestly, the timing, it couldn't have been better. Aviron is known for its interactive games and immersive workouts. But what's also cool is you can watch YouTube on here. So I've been catching up on all my favorite content creators, where I watch videos and walk, which is exactly how I've been using this. I've had the treadmill now for 10 days, and I've used it every single day. Even on my busiest park days, when I get home late and I just want to wind down, it's become the easy, reliable way to keep my momentum going no matter what my schedule looks like. And now, for the first time in years, I'm not staring at the clock waiting for the workout to end. The Aviron treadmill made moving something I actually look forward to. I often walk way past my scheduled time or steps. If you've been wanting to get back into shape or just stay active during busy days, check out Aviron's Victory treadmill using the link in the description box below. Thanks to Aviron for sponsoring today's video. All right, let's go back to the start of Route 66. This building, designed in a Western industrial vernacular, a blend of early 20th century American industrial architecture, and most importantly, a small town Western commercial frontage. It blends in, nobody questions it, that's its job. But it's here because it's always been here. So the byproduct of pushing the land back to the service road meant there was no area for a backstage. So Disney kept the original backstage buildings from Bountiful Garden and built all around it. But Disneyland operations have to exist somewhere. This brilliantly converted what would have been traditionally an operational space to an onstage guest experience. Means that all the backstage square foot disappeared. And so the only place that was left was in the middle of the land. Let me explain how this works. Because Imagineering did something incredibly smart, they disguised it all. And it only made the land stronger, never feel weaker. So they disguised it, not by hiding it, but by folding it into the Radiator Springs story. They used Radiator Springs colors, they used the land's textures, typography, and storytelling. They softened the edge with trees, they blended it deep into the visual noise of the land. But here's the thing, this isn't where Backstage starts, it's actually where it stops. There's an entire artery hidden behind the land that brings cast members into this final location. All around the backside of the land, they had to bring Backstage on stage. In fact, when they first started the new expansion of Avengers Campus, where did they start? On this service road. So instead of going with a traditional layout where all Backstage is just that, Backstage, they created an invisible path behind the land that all ends right here. Keeping the original Backstage building meant that they had to create an invisible path to it. So this building, where cast members eat food in silence and get a break from all the noise of the park, this isn't just a building made of compromise. It's the design trick making the land as big as possible. And quietly paying tribute to DCA 1.0, hidden in plain sight, with a Backstage building that became part of the show. And by Disney placing Backstage on stage, it's literally the key that allowed Cars Land to become Cars Land. So this building and the network of Backstage buildings and paths that lead up to it, they quietly and invisibly saved the entire land. And I think in the process, saved DCA. But this isn't the first time Disney has done these unconventional layouts to make lands bigger. Watch this video right here to see what's hiding beneath Fantasyland. I'm Bricky, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you.